Okay, so let's start. Welcome back, you all, to the IFLA webinar series. I'm Anushruti and I manage communications here at IFLA. Thank you so much for joining in. Without wasting any time, I'm going to hand over to Marina, who is our moderator for today. Marina is the Executive Director at the Barcelona International Biennale of Landscape Architecture. So thank you, Marina, for being here, and over to you. Before we start, I would request you all to please keep your mics off, so that we can, have a non-interrupted discussion. And after all the presentations, I'm going to open the floor for Q&A. So you can just type in your questions in the chat box, and I'll read it out, and our panelists can answer. So let's get started. Over to you, Marina.
Thank you so much, Anu, for this very kind presentation. So we'll start today with this second webinar. We are thrilled to have this second part because we want to start discussing among the professionals matters that are pressing and that are important. So we are welcoming you to this International Federation of Landscape Architects webinar that is it's entitled Designing Nature Positive Landscapes, Integrating Circular Economy Principles. So basically, we will try to be exploring how this transformative potential of integrating nature positive design can be aligned with the principles of circular economy. So in here, we want to be ambitious in the discussions. We are not just about minimizing harm, but it's about actively regenerating ecosystems and creating landscapes that within themselves they thrive. So we would like to address this topic through world-renowned experts. And today it is my pleasure to include in this session Nick Jeffries from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, Dr. Audrey Tim from AIPH, Professor Catherine Moore, as IFLA representative, but also Birmingham City University, Professor Maria Ignatieva from Urbio, and Elizabeth Belper, president from Isocarp. So with and through their interventions, I hope that we will have time to share insights and talk about how the design of landscapes can help closing this loop and enhance biodiversity and contribute to a more flourishing and stable and resilient planet. So I will allocate a little bit of time for each one of our presenters for the day. That's the dynamic that we are going to establish. So each one will present their point of views and opinions, and then we will wrap up to then open the floor to our audience, online audience, so that they can just propose questions and we can have time to chat and have a little bit of an exchange. So that's our purpose for the session. It's our pleasure, I have to say again. And I would like to first of all introduce you our first panelist. Our first panelist is Nick Jeffries. As I have just mentioned, he has been working for almost a decade with this Ellen MacArthur Foundation that is championing the circular economy in a different number of areas, including basically maybe water, food systems, and more recently built environment. And that's why we thought it would be key to establish relations and start to discuss the project they've been dealing and see how landscape architecture can contribute in any aspect. So Nick, it would be our pleasure if you can introduce your first ideas. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Marina, and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to join this webinar and present some of EMF's work to you all. I'm going to try and share my screen now so I can just pull my slides up. Marina, can you see that? Or can everyone see that? I assume you can. Yeah, so today I want to share some insights from our recently published Building Prosperity report, which explored the topic of circular nature positive cities, which hopefully connects in some way with the work of the Federation and its members. But before I dive in, let me share two relevant projects from my background. First, from my
I
time
cannot
as...
see the slides.
Oh, can you not?
No.
All right, let me just try again. Okay, let me just try again. We tested this earlier, of course, and
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Can you
can
see
It
the
see the
works?
slides?
slides. Yeah.
Okay.
You can see
And
them?
we're good.
Everyone good?
Click.
Yeah, okay. So sharing a couple of projects with you. So this first from my time as an environmental engineer, this is the Princess Diana Memorial Fountain in Hyde Park, designed by Gustafsson Porter. Now for this project, water was pumped from 130 meters underground and circulated around the 180 meter long oval granite ring. The water system design included a small engineered leak of about 2 to 3% of flow, which discharged into the adjacent Serpentine Lake. And in this way, it enhanced the lake water's quality. Leaky but nutritious is how I like to describe it. The small contribution to the lake's water quality was topped up by the groundwater. And so this actually eliminated the need for chemicals, as it was an interactive fountain. So, and also this meant that the fountain's water reservoir could also be used to irrigate the surrounding landscape, as it did not have chemicals in it. So hey presto, a circular and regenerative water supply system. So on the other side of the world, the Orongo Cattle Station, which is a 3,000 acre coastal farm located on the north tip of New Zealand. So when new owners took over in 2001, they inherited an ecological disaster. And this was from a century of overgrazing and deforestation. Soil health was devastated, a wetland had been drained, and massive erosion gullies crisscrossed the landscape. So at this point, the new owners brought on a landscape architecture practice called Nelson Bird Vaults, I'm sure you've heard of, and they created a master plan that balanced ecosystem restoration, food production, and a respect for local cultural traditions. 20 years later, the farm is more profitable than ever. The local community have access to and an active role in the management of the landscape. And nearly 20% of the farm area has been set aside for wildlife zones, including as a habitat for the super, super rare tuatara lizard. Until this point, this lizard only existed in small islands off New Zealand. So what I hope these projects show is how landscape design can contribute to the economy in a way that also enhances natural ecosystem and engenders human health and well-being. And this leads perfectly to our 2024 Building Prosperity report, which explores what a regenerative circular economy could look like at the scale of Europe's built environment. So for this study, we asked two key questions. So what would it mean to evolve the way we deliver the next decade of urban development based on circular nature positive principles? And how would the economy, nature, and society benefit from such an evolution? And we chose the built environment as a sector because of the crucial role that it plays in Europe's overall economy, as well as its appeal. Its massive material intensity. I think each European citizen consumes the equivalent of 5.5 tons of construction materials each year. Its contribution to the climate emergency and the high demand it faces over the next decade. So for our modelling, we focused on 6 strategies which we deemed had great economic potential, but at the same time could drive nature positive outcomes across 3 dimensions. Firstly, revitalise. So halting urban sprawl through revitalising empty buildings and brownfield sites. Maximise, increasing urban nature through tree-lined streets, parks, and the increased use of nature-based infrastructure. And finally, optimise, reducing supply chain impacts through efficient design and procurement. And our modelling showed significant benefits. 575 billion in direct economic benefits, this is per year, for the construction sector, including landscape architects, contractors, and equipment suppliers. 150 billion odd per year benefits for urban businesses and citizens mainly through more attractive, thriving and resilient cities. And then a broader set of climate, social and nature benefits, including reduced heat island effect, better flood protection, cleaner air, and improved well-being through more access to green spaces. So I encourage you to dip into the report, which I'm sure will be shared in due course. As well as setting out the benefits, it also laid out the enabling conditions that are needed to drive implementation, as well as the key stakeholders who need to collaborate to overcome the barriers. And also several successful case studies from across the continent, including Copenhagen, Ljubljana, Hamburg, Bucharest, and others. All cities that have embraced nature positivity, developed strategies and policies that support nature positive design, and are benefiting from long-term thinking. So this is all a bit of a whistle-stop tour to basically what was a year's project. But let me just finish off by asking the question, what does this mean for landscape architects? So as key practitioners in shaping our built environment, I believe you have a unique opportunity to accelerate the adoption of nature positive design solutions. So what kind of roles can you play? First, familiarize yourself with a macroeconomic case. Integrating nature into cities isn't just good for the environment, it also makes a compelling business case. When presenting your designs, be forearmed with the economic arguments. Second, you need to emphasize how nature-based solutions can deliver multiple benefits compared to, say, traditional grey infrastructure. While a conventional drainage system only manages water, a well-designed, say, rain garden or bioswale also enhances biodiversity, improves air quality, reduces urban heat, and creates amenity value. Making this multiplier effect explicit could help justify the investment. Third, build your capability to quantify benefits using ecosystem service frameworks and emerging digital tools. The ability to demonstrate and quantify tangible returns, whether that's carbon sequestered, flood risk reduced, health costs avoided, could be very powerful in securing project approval and funding. One of the case studies in the report references such an ecosystem services framework developed by a company called Ecometrics. Finally, see yourselves as integrators and conveners. The most successful nature positive projects, like the ones I shared today, bring together multiple stakeholders, urban planners, engineers, ecologists, communities. Landscape master planners are well positioned to be the glue that binds these perspectives together. So I'll leave it there for now. I hope that was interesting, somewhat relevant. Looking forward to discussion. Back to you, Marina.
Thank you so much. It was really interesting, I have to say. So, but we'll be back. So everything in the right order. I'll be back with some questions for you, Nick. And now we go to our next presenter. That's Audrey Tim, Professor Audrey Tim. She is a Technical Initiatives Manager at the International Association of Horticultural Producers. And I'm very pleased to give her voice, also to make a little bit of a position or statement from her point of view with us today. Thank you, Audrey.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Marina. I'm very pleased to be here today and just screen sharing. There you go. And on we go. Yep, is that looking okay? There you go. Good. So very nice to follow on from Nick's presentation with some lovely images of beautiful landscapes and good indication of links with the landscape architects. So hoping I will be able to demonstrate as well how the horticultural producers work with landscape architects. I'm with AIPH. We are the International Association of Horticultural Producers. This is what we do in a nutshell. We put flower, plant, and landscaping products and services on a global agenda. And we do this in a number of ways, stimulating worldwide demand, a hub for industry information, and nurturing partnerships. This is an outline of who we are and what we do. One of our big programs is our Green City Initiative. And we believe that we contribute quite significantly to nature positive landscapes. Our main outcome in this is to nurture a strategic shift in city form and function where plants and nature are considered in every aspect of decision making. We aim to demonstrate that plants provide solutions for climate adaptation and to create a recognition that plants create resilient and livable cities. But in order to do this, this is obviously, we see the benefits of this, but why is it not becoming so prevalent in global agendas? So we have to take one step to the side and look at where are the gaps. We see the gaps in there's a lack of awareness of the science behind the benefits of plants in the urban context. We look at promoting a recognition of the importance of informed plant selection. You might hear right plant, right place. We add right purpose onto it. There's a pure understanding of procurement pathways of how plants are actually produced and delivered to get into successful city landscapes. And we see too much of misguided assumptions about cost-benefit balance or imbalance, which is the misguided aspect of it. And it's in these aspects that we look at working quite closely with architects and landscape architects, and are very pleased already to be linking quite a lot with IFLA. So to fill in some of these gaps, we promote knowledge exchange and networking. We've got a lot of programs where we bring information about the science behind plants in the urban landscape. And we create also networking opportunities. We've got a really good range of case studies. And we also showcase best practice and some guidelines. And all of this, we feel, contributes to our vision as the world's champion for the power of plants. And we promote the many ways in which we think living green, the plants, the nature, promote resilient cities and urban landscapes. But taking this step one further and looking at integrating the circular economy principles, the global ornamental horticulture industry has got an estimated value of more than 400 billion, both in the products that it delivers and in the services and the people that use it and the whole supply chain of it. But there are two aspects to our work when we look at circular economy, and one of those is how we actually produce our products. That's something that we have control over. And we've done a lot of work in sustainability. Our industry is subject to a lot of scrutiny for sustainability, and we work hard to show that we are improving. And the three essential themes of circular economy: limiting waste and pollution, circular products and materials, and regenerating nature. These we are comfortable that we can embed in production of flowers and ornamental plants for landscapes. But when you think about the work that we do in the urban context, our impact is multi-industry, multidisciplinary, and global. And this infographic shows, it won't even fit on one slide, the many aspects that we touch on. So it makes it slightly more difficult to really intervene. And we have to be very clear on where our influence is and where our impact is. So we look at integrating nature positive landscapes with circular economy principles in the urban context by thinking about where we have some impact on cities. And there's four aspects here that we think that are considered to be how cities can embed circular economy principles. So we look at those four of those and where AIPH either is or can develop far more context, more influence, and have some way of shaping how cities become circular through use of horticultural products. And this is something we're developing on, so we'll keep in touch and you'll see how we progress in this. Obviously time is short, so I won't go into too much detail, but one of the things that we do in helping cities with this is we help cities to achieve recognizable green city status, and this helps them become more competitive and more able to demonstrate their circular principles. Our two big flagships are the AIPH World Green City Awards, which are the only global awards celebrating urban living green. And I'm really pleased to say that the 2026 edition has just opened for entries. Our newest AIPH initiative is the AIPH Global Green City Standard, which is in very early stages of development, but this provides cities with a clear roadmap how to implement urban greening to achieve measurable outcomes and gain recognition. And I'm sure you'll be hearing more about this too in the near future. So just to close, we're talking about linking with landscape architects today, but one of our main activities and our main energies goes into nurturing partnerships. And it is in this way that we can contribute to a holistic approach to changing the way cities work and really having a little bit more of influence and impact. So this is a range of our partners that we work with, and we are constantly in progress of searching for and establishing new partnerships. So I'll stop there and hand back to you, Marina. And thanks very much for the opportunity to put the AIPH perspective to IFLA, to the panel and to the audience.
Thank you, Audrey. I think it was brilliant, very quick and easy way to understand your initiatives and that you are fostering. So thank you for this intervention. Also, we will be back. We will try to launch some questions at all the panelists of today's session. And now we move to our third panelist. Today with us, we have Professor Catherine Moore. Professor Catherine Moore, she's the director of the West Midland National Park and also professor in landscape architecture at Birmingham City University. For the IFLA France, she's a well-known, she was past president a few years ago, and she's currently IFLA Special Envoy for the UN Habitat Professionals Forum. So Catherine, I guess you're there. You should.
I am here.
Okay, camera on, please, and mic. Thank you.
My camera is on, I think.
Oh, I don't see it on. Sorry. Maybe it's me.
No? Can anyone else see me? Audrey, can you see me? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Seems it's me. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you very much, Marina. Participating in a panel a couple of weeks ago, a landscape panel, experts, I realised that if I'd asked each of the experts to define what they meant by nature, none of them would agree. And it shouldn't have been a shock because I've written about this before. But if any of us think that what nature is universally agreed, that we all know what it is because it's blindingly obvious, we're missing the bigger picture. And if we are to deal more effectively with the global challenges we face, with a sense of urgency that is really needed, we have to dispense, I believe, with the nature-culture divide. This divide is why landscape nature, biodiversity, etc., are all woefully underestimated. We are absolutely part of nature. So what we choose to do now is it's not a question of choosing to work more closely with nature because we're not disconnected in the first place. We need a different way of operating. Natural systems don't stop where the buildings start. It's only from habit that we divide nature and culture, tangible from intangible, etc. And to overcome these dualities requires ditching both narrowly scientific and wildly subjective approaches to nature. And to realise that we can only ever see, perceive or interpret nature through a cultural lens. Landscape is our response to the physical cultural context of our lives. There's no way of seeing it all in all innocence, naked, without reference or beyond reason. And value and meaning are not inherent in nature itself any more than in art or language. It's not a special case. In fact, there are no special cases. Rather than ideas versus nature, we have ideas of nature. Instead of seeing nature as something separate from culture, from ourselves, we must recognize that in the way we live our lives with every intervention we make, we are expressing, consciously or not, an attitude towards the physical world. So the choice is not whether we work with art or ecology, with nature or culture, but how considerately, how imaginatively, and how responsibly we go about our business, because for every one of our actions, there is a reaction in the physical world. We impact on it every minute of every day, where we decide to build new cities or expand old ones, place streets, squares, parks, and gardens. And how we do this, where we do this, reflects the values that we have, that we place on the quality of our physical environment. The materiality of landscape includes our memories, our values, our hopes and aspirations. It shapes our culture, and landscape shapes our culture and identity. It's the very bedrock of society, the infrastructure upon which we depend for everything, and it's time to stop overlooking it. So to truly understand the potential of the circular economy, we need to see nature differently and in a different context. We need to understand the complexity of the interrelated systems that produce the world we live in, and the even more opaque systems that dispose of waste we produce. We need a reset. You also asked me some questions about the West Midlands National Park. It's not a traditional park. It's a new kind of urban national park. It's self-proclaimed. It's not protected legally. It works in a very different way through the foundation and the advisory group. It aims to bring the values of the national park to urban populations rather than expecting them to travel out to the countryside. So it's about transformation as much as conservation and preservation. It involves working with a host of people, businesses, government, health people from the health sector, artists, scientists, economists, the probation services we're working with. And the aim is to create something that's more than the sum of its parts, that the most important thing driving the whole initiative is that it puts quality of life and quality of the environment right at the top of the political agenda, instead of after all the major so-called objective decisions have been made. And by working geographically and from a landscape-led perspective, it's enabling these clients, these partners that we're working with and communities to see the world in a different way, to learn something new and to see the bigger picture. It's helping to give agency to these people and to shift institutional attitudes towards the land. The mapping helps us understand this complexity and what we need to do in the future to address past mistakes. It's about making the tremendous capacity of the land and the biosphere for resuscitation and replenishment, and the power of the physical, cultural, everyday landscape to address the challenges we face through proper advocacy and engagement with communities and decision makers. And the principles of a circular economy are integral to understanding this bigger picture. The International Landscape Convention that some of you have worked on is absolutely part of this work. It's to ensure that landscape is no longer a blind spot in regional and city economic strategies, or indeed any other kind of spatial strategy, but an economic resource, a social, cultural, environmental and economic resource that will help address spatial and social justice across all 17 UN SDGs and the New Urban Agenda. And this is supported by policy drivers that are deceptively simple, but actually quite revolutionary and disruptive, focused on the child. So, for example, every child should be able to see the stars at night. What we did at the UN Habitat Urban Thinkers campus that we held in Birmingham in October was to ask our speakers to think about what that would mean for their area of work. And actually, if you begin to unravel it, it affects every possible sector and gives a different way of looking at the world. And to support all of these initiatives, we're looking at how we can develop new financial, governance and institutional structures with people from different sectors, not just keep elbowing each other out of the way, but actually sharing ambitions and aspirations. And in particular, it's utilising the overwhelming desire of communities, particularly younger generations, to address the problems that face us. And so I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Perfect. I think that it will give us the occasion to then go back and discuss and maybe find common points also with with Audrey and the need for partnership and trying to find different ways to work in the future. So let's now go with our next panelist. It's my pleasure to introduce Professor Maria Ignitieva. Maria is president from Urban Biodiversity and Design Network, which is Urbio. But she's also professor of landscape architecture at the University of Western Australia. She was indeed the winner of the 2024 IFLA President's Award that we celebrated last September, October, maybe, in Istanbul. So Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the invitation. A very interesting, inspiring webinar. I now try to share my slides. So, and hope you can see that. So, in this only next 6-7 minutes, I would like to show you the perspective what Urbio have and how we can contribute to the place urban biodiversity in circular economy. And I would like to say I'm representing Urban Biodiversity and Design International Network. So it's combining also all the wildlife ecologists, also planners and landscape architects, and also practitioners and stakeholders. And first of all, when we know of the 3 core principles of the circular economy, and I think the most what we contributed by Urbio activity and all our people who is working there is in regenerative nature, restore, improve the natural systems. And I would like to also remind you the definition of urban biodiversity, because actually it's different in urban environment compared to biodiversity. We talk always about biodiversity, but I think, as Catherine actually mentioned, it's very important to know what is the nature is, what is the biodiversity, because it's also define what we are doing and how we can contribute to with our activity. So first of all, urban biodiversity today is a part of ecosystem services. I think you know that. And it's contributed to reduction of the air and soil pollution because it's simply plants and natural environment. It's also interactions with nature and also to human well-being. We know all the green infrastructure and green spaces. Also, being landscape architects, we also should know the and when we design with ecological knowledge. And also, but the very crucial, we now really emphasizes recently, is the management of natural processes, when we unfortunately don't know too much yet. But what's happening after implementation of our projects, actually in a very long perspective, not only after 1 or 2 years, we usually prepare the plan, but also after 20, 30, and 100 years. Again, I would like to, now it's very nice, Catherine, you talk about these several natures, and natures are different in different definitions. But we are seeing urban ecosystem are very complex and have several natures. And we are talking about restoration, a whole complex, not only about plants we're usually doing, but also the wildlife. And what we're trying to restore is a natural native ecosystems. So now it's a very, very big movement all around the globe, I can tell you, because I had the privilege to live and work in all hemispheres. And I know now restoration of native ecosystem is task number 1, because we are really dramatically losing that, even in the places that should be not, like, for example, in Australia or New Zealand, but we are really losing that. Mimicking natural processes, ecological management, for example, we need to learn how nature works. Also, ecological principles by the learning about dynamic changes, different selections of the materials, and here I refer to Audrey, who is working with plant materials, climate change, and we know that very soon we can grow plants when we could grow, like, for example, in Northern Europe. Also, it's very important to refer in our Urbio activity about cultural natural systems and learning from the past practices we unfortunately forgot very often. For example, use of fire. And we know it's very difficult, but still fire is a very important disturbance factor and can help us to identify these circular economy, for example, grazing, gardening, and I put a couple of examples here. One from the goat grazing and Bavarian Environmental Agency, who actually got a handling these unwanted spontaneous plants then and nobody else actually can eat or remove, and that now it's a whole stock, like experimental stock in Bavaria. And also example of how it's different, learn about the natural process in other places. So it's a very local environment. Like in New Zealand, it's not like a corridor we used to have in Europe or other places, but it's more virtual corridor. We know exactly how a bird will fly and distribute all this plant material. Also, nature positive design, we're talking about quite a lot, but I would like to say that role of Urbio, first of all, is in promoting of the urban biodiversity maintenance of green spaces. Also, we try to learn from each other from all this tremendous amount of examples from around the world. And also we try to integrate a parallel integration of the cultural and ecological awareness. And here I put several examples of, for example, New Zealand predator-free fence sanctuaries, because it's only way, particularly in New Zealand, because there's a flightless birds and there's very isolated ecosystem from 80 million years ago. So it's only one way to protect it. On the other hand, for example, in Europe or in United States, you can do promote of restoration of the complex character of the urban ecosystems and return to the less managed landscape and more biodiverse landscape at the same time, like grass-free lawn, like pollinated islands in different examples. It's now everywhere in Germany or other European countries. Also, restoration of the grasslands is a really huge movement around the globe, because grasslands was like our very important givers for food, everything else, and then they was completely disappeared. Also, we still need to work, and we use already these circular principles when we mentioned reduction of air water pollution. We use a lot of water sensitive design, also reuse of materials, but we still need to know, for example, what to do with all this new biomass when we cutting all the grass. Are we going to use it because it's going to be polluted or not? Also, we always working in the different scale, from very, very big scale, like we're doing all this urban biotope mapping, to the very fine scale when we're working with the all these experimental sites that need to try all these kind of dynamic processes and everything else. And also would like to mention now it's a really big movement, try to create the public parks and keep the wildlife habitats. Actually, especially in Southern Hemisphere, because of the character of this unique landscape in South Africa, is a big movement of the encouraging of wildlife with interactions with humans. But it actually has a down part as well, whom we are attracting. So in some places you don't like to attract like people afraid of snake and everything else. And I would like to conclude this saying and give you some of the biodiversity positive successful landscapes. And again, it's a very complex approach we are promoting. It's should be all kind of organisms. We have to target it, wildlife, plants. Very often there's emphasis only on natives, but we need to mimic native ecosystem where we can and create multi-layers compositions. Also, human well-being, as I mentioned, we have to really, when they design this kind of and try, it's very important, like to know from wildlife ecologist point of view, when we're attracting wildlife, for whom we're attracting, how people will be reacted on that. Also, what our target now, what we need to do still in Urbia, isn't even for quite a few years now, it's almost movement existed, in ecology, but still is very young. We still don't know all the urban ecosystems. We know native ecosystems, but not urban. We need to have a comparison analysis between cities, countries, continents, and actually we're trying to do it in our Urbio activities, in our conferences, in our publications. Research of this phytocenology is a very new word maybe for you, but it's actually a special science exactly who is researching dynamic succession of the designed landscapes when we designed it in architectural compositions. And also acceptance of the ecological thinkings by citizens and decision makers, because all this messy ecosystem not always are welcome, and we know that all this our new meadows or our brown fields when we return to the more biodiverse landscape. And of course, I would like to emphasize in the end, we really need to put the research into practice, and that's what we're trying to do, invited all these practitioners. And we need to be involved and actually design this experimental trials as a landscape architects. And I also would like to have, from my perspective, living in Australia and New Zealand and knowing people from South Africa and Africa in general, many Asian countries, we still need to have an emphasis on Global South because we have a very, very few data on research and practical applications. And we need to have practical applications, and people can do that in real life, like a manual for stakeholders, and to have a more research on saving water. Here's now the task number one, and especially in countries with the hot and dry climate. And I put for you different examples showing the all urban soils. You see how many creatures are living there, how much we know about that? Not too much. Or like biotope mapping, actually our students doing this exercise next to their house to show them then actually we are living and not only in design landscape, but it's also in very important urban ecosystems. So this very briefly, I think, I hope I answered these questions. Then we try to discuss today, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much for your presentation. It's always good to have slides and have a little bit of examples that we can check maybe afterwards. And now we move to our final panelists. So we move to Elisabeth Belper. Elisabeth, she's the president of the International Society of City and Regional Planners, so ISOCARP. And it's our pleasure to have her today as last contributor to this webinar session. Elisabeth, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marina. Can I share, please? But then the previous speaker.
Yeah, I try. Just 1 second. I try. Sorry.
Stop sharing.
Can you stop sharing, Marina, or just not working for me? Here, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Very quickly, little quick scan for those who don't know. So ISOCARP, International Society of City and Regional Planners. We are a global association. It's like IFLA, then of professional urban and regional planners with members in over 90 countries. And we have both practitioners, academics, and civil servants. So we offer the theory, practice, and policy triple perspective. And our vision is to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable through integrated and participatory urban and territorial planning. And so we mobilize the planners to co-implement the vision of the SDGs and the urban agenda and push the boundaries to go further. This year we exist 60 years, and a couple of months ago we had 2 global events, one in Siena, one in New Clark City, and the one in New Clark City was on new regenerative cities. So this is part of our community, our family. They are too part of our family. We are entering the 35th year of the Young Planners professional program, and we are in the 4th year of Women in Planning, all very important also for nature. So a couple of reflections around some questions and topics. How can planning frameworks be adapted to better integrate the principles of nature positive circularity in the planning and development and design of urban environments? The title of the webinar itself is actually a lot to unpack, and you could organize a whole workshop on just that. But so first of all, by rethinking the entire notion of the anthropocentric and profit-oriented planning towards more nature-based and people-centered planning. As you all know, we are consuming more than one Earth, 1.7, I think it's already a little bit more even. And if we just continue, we will need 3 planet Earths by 2050 for the use of resources. So one of our rethink is the scientific committee that has a work group that is thinking about post-growth, degrowth. And in this thinking and exploration, there is also the concept of the donut economy. In this framework, we invited speakers from Amsterdam to Brussels, actually 2 cities that apply this concept and that also look at it from a planning perspective and make place in the city for circular economy and people-based. And thinking about how we can manage and plan the cities to foster regenerative resources flow, for example. It's also about imagining, and as Catherine was mentioning, every child to see the stars is part of this. Imagining that we live in a world where biodiversity loss, inequity, climate change is actually a story of the past, and where the humanity chose regeneration over degradation and also over sustaining. And part of that is to anticipate trends, and this is, I'm part of this foresight community, to look into the future. It's not about predicting the future, but understanding the drivers of change that are outside of our control, and then how we can act, how we can plan scenarios, and when it's time to act. And this is also important for nature. It's also by reviewing and reforming outdated and unsustainable planning systems, and there are plenty in the world. So we need a shift from traditional zoning and static top-down master planning to integrated strategic and more participatory planning. What it means is also a focus more on systems thinking, where the regional level is very important, water systems, natural structures, ecological systems, transport systems, food systems, and so on, but also the neighborhood level. Neighborhood where you can engage the communities, where you can address concepts as circular loops of water, of energy, for example, and where people can participate because that's where their daily experience and their environment is. So what specific policy changes and planning tools are needed? Again, this is just a snapshot of a few things where we need some change. Again, here a focus on the regional level. This is the small circle as a city, the bigger one a regional, and we immediately look at the landscape structure. This is a project in Vietnam, and where you see that the underlying structure is actually a sponge structure, and how this can guide the further city development using these natural structures, and at the same time be able to capture water to think of mitigation of flooding, etc. And in this context, we also need scenario planning. And scenario planning is not just for planners in the city, but also for the community. So how can we engage the community? Here is, for instance, through a board game, where they learn how to plan scenarios in the future. Again, what does it mean for more nature-based solutions with the possible impact of climate change and biodiversity specific to the context of the city? It also means that, and this is an example of AI, as we all know, can make us, help us as a tool to have more efficient water use, for example. But also we need to look at indigenous intelligence, traditional intelligence, and collective intelligence. And so here in our World Congress in Toronto, we invited an indigenous planner, and there are very few in the world. And then we learn about the 7-generation cities. What happens when you look 7 generations ahead, and all the elements are related to nature. It's actually a concept hiding in plain sight. It's also about, a tool is also about engaging the community, building awareness, and this is an example of 2 cities, Antwerp and Brussels, where air pollution was measured, but also drought in gardens and small parks, and therefore an enormous awareness was built with the population, but also with the local government, the schools, the private sector. And here is an interesting tool. It's land pooling used in Switzerland. Again, very important if we think of natural structures, ecological networks, nature-based solutions, is the consolidation of small irregular plots of multiple owners, leading to an optimized land use, more equitable land distribution, allowing circular systems. And as you can see on the right, there is more non-hard surface than hard surface in this neighborhood, and that's quite unusual for urban. So what is our role and collaboration then with IFLA? And here I want to focus on the fact that usually we look at the built environment, but there is the built environment, there is the invisible environment and the future environment. With 60% of the built environment yet to be built, there is some opportunity in thinking ahead and how we can leverage values and concepts for the urban areas that yet have to be built, and have not nature as an afterthought or a hindsight, but actually as a guiding value and principle, and all the values that are related with it, emotional values, also from the local communities in the wider region. And the invisible environment is this, what we don't see. For planners, it also means, for instance, the underground, the soil. It also means the informal settlements, and then the underrepresented groups that are falling through the mazes of planning and management of cities. So just to give an example, in September, we had our first international conference on new regenerative cities in the Philippines, the Global South. And here, I think an important tool that we used is a manifesto. It's a living manifesto, so it's something which is not an end document. It's actually a manifesto with engagement of people from the village, from the region where the new city will be built, up to triangulating with the experts and academics and practitioners from all over the world. So as we know, by 2050, 70% will live in cities. We know that 70% of cities produce waste, energy, and that 60% of the built environment yet has to be built. So in this Congress, we organized the Do Track to engage in the process to develop a manifesto. And unlike sustainable development, regenerative practices and processes and systems, they go beyond sustaining or maintaining ecosystems, for example. And they aim to restore, to renew, to heal, to revitalize, and to increase natural systems with a focus on health, resilience, vitality, and also emotional values. So this, just a couple of days ago, we had a workshop on the ISOCARP Manifesto, which has been evolving since September and will continue to evolve, where people from, I think, 4 or 5 continents were present and keep on building on this manifesto, which will create new values for new cities. Important, of course, is in planning, which is a very suited way of integrating the different sectors, so also landscape, nature, economy, transport, and so on. That's also what we try to do in these congresses. So here we had a partnership with IFLA also to integrate landscape, to look at circularity, together with the local government, national government, learning from how nature-based solutions are integrated in national policies in other countries in the region, to architecture, and young planners that you can see at the bottom. And they were, there was 30 of them, I think, in different cities, and they would also present on what they've done during the week before the Congress. We also are present at COP together with IFLA. We have been participating, and next year will be also our first COP on biodiversity. This is another option for collaborating, is actually joint reports and knowledge sharing. And I think particularly about nature-based solutions, it would be very good. And then when we move to the invisible environment, we actually come to the idea or the value also of equity. And mostly social equity or inequity is addressed. There is also the spatial inequity. And we know that while the equity between countries has been decreasing, the inequity within countries and within cities and between cities has been increasing. Here you can see, this is New York a couple of months ago, how the inequity is of heat island effect. And if you overlap that with green, for example, and socioeconomic factors, you see that there is an overlap and that they are disproportionately underrepresented areas. So every child seeing a star is also about every child in a neighborhood having access to green within a certain distance from where she or he lives. And this is an example of a city that has been using mapping, socioeconomic, green, a lot of different factors, and then has been focusing on certain neighborhoods as a hotspot. And this is in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city of Ghent, for which vision was developed in 2000. So the long-term perspective is very important, under the name of oxygen for the neighborhood, how we can make sure that everybody has access to green for all the different reasons. So it started with how can we create green in a very dense environment? It means that the city is intervening and has the first right of buying properties that become empty, another important tool. And over the years, this has been increasing, been linked with a network. On the left side is a natural area that has been made accessible for everybody in the neighborhood. And here you have a young lady, she grew up there. And for her, the network of green helped her connecting with a lot of different nationalities and other young people in the neighborhood. And now she wants to give back. And this person was mentally not feeling well, is an immigrant, again, a situation which we see very often, and how nature helped him to connect with others and with the neighborhood. He also said that nature doesn't judge. He started making some kind of vertical garden at the foot of the settlement or the house where he lives, and then helped neighbors to do the same. And then the city decided that no permission was needed anymore. And so instead of regulating, which is also necessary, like regulating protection areas, etc., this was actually deregulating to enable the inhabitants of the neighborhood to establish green. And this, they are also measuring the amount of insects and other small insects and birds and bees and so on. So this has not only contributed to oxygen in the neighborhood for the people, but also to the mental health, to connections in the neighborhood, to connecting across generations and ecological networks. And some of the last public spaces that have been created there are also contributing to climate adaptation for the neighborhood. So this is just an example of how this can work on the neighborhood level and how we can reduce inequity by focusing on these neighborhoods that are lacking. So thank you.
So thank you so much, Elizabeth. We are a little bit short on time, so I will try to make a super speedy recap, and I will not raise questions because I think that we have to finish within the time frame that we were given. So trying to go back with our first contributor, that was Nick Jeffries, and that I think that he gave us two beautiful hints. One was the 6 strategies that the foundation is proposing: revitalize, maximize, optimize, which I think it was quite inspiring and clear as tools that we could all adapt. And also, I love this idea of giving some advice for practitioners to accelerate the adoption of these circular frameworks. So working on our capacity building and our role of mediation, I think that were the main aspects that I would highlight. Then we moved to Audrey Tim's intervention, which I think that also has given us tools through another kind of tool. So instead of strategies, she commented on the Green City Award 2026 as an initiative. Sometimes awards can be a way to make people aware, participate, and also to establish a partnership. So new partnerships through other associations and UN bodies can be also a good tool for us to prepare for this future. Then we had the intervention of Professor Catherine Moore, advocating for the International Landscape Convention as a potential transversal, non-disciplinary bounded policy that would enable another decision-making and policies that we are adopting also world, regional and municipal level. Then we had this fourth intervention of Maria Ignatieva, which took us to the idea of this complex approach that was managing and highlighted the importance of research into practice, which I think it's really to account as practitioners that we are, a lot of us also linked to research and to academy and the importance of this ecosystem in this, from academy to professional practice. And then we ended with Elisabeth Berber also claim for the importance of different kind of knowledge that I really appreciate. So all this kind of traditional indigenous knowledge that would help us to move from a traditional planning systems to a more system thinking based and participatory based planning. So through all the five interventions, we've seen several ways in which we could contribute for a future framework. I had in mind questions, especially relatively to what's going to happen after 2030. So the new sustainable agenda is giving us 5 more years, but there's an open framework for us as professionals, as researchers to try to give our outcomes and influence in the next period of time. So I was thinking that all these kind of tools like the ISOCAR manifesto, the awards, the strategies, the different research by design options or the ELC could be things that maybe we could articulate in a future discussion and make them as contribution to this new world framework. So I know that we had a question, and I don't know if there's more. I've noticed one question in our chat that was targeting
So Marina,
economies principles, and if those, it was asked if those could be applied to urban landscapes at any city.
yes, yes, Marina, that was, I think, answered by Nick in the chat. So
Okay,
thanks, Nick, for
super.
that. But we do have one more question. Maybe we can take that one in and quickly wrap this up. So the question is, how can we adapt or commence awareness of these adaptations and ways of thinking in developing nations, in the questioner's case, Mexico? Is this transferable to the developing world? Or is there success examples?
So if anybody, but I think Nick and Catherine had to run, so
Yes.
maybe Elizabeth or Audrey could help us out in answering this question.
Yeah.
Or Maria.
Thanks.
Sorry,
I saw
Maria.
the question. I saw the question and I've just popped in just quickly a link to the case studies from the AIPH World Green City Awards 2022 and 2024 editions. And there are 2 programs from Mexico City that the case studies are there. So that's a good place to start. So have a look. And if you want more information, just, drop us a line and see what we can do to help. So I hope that's a good place to start.
Perfect.
Thank you, Audrey.
Perfect timing. Okay, so I think that we have to wrap up. So thank you very much. Thank you for your time. First of all, thank you to all the panelists today. So Nick Jeffries, Audrey Team, Catherine Moore, Maria Ignateva, and Elizabeth Berber. Thank you also to all of the audience, all of you that have been following this webinar today. It's a pleasure to continue with this series on behalf of IFLA World, and hoping to meet you again very soon. Thank you very much. Have a very nice day.
Thank you, Marina. And I have just put in my email address. So in case anyone wants to reach out to us, please feel free for the recording. The recording would be available on our YouTube channel. But for any questions, for any links, please feel free to reach out to me. I have written my email address in the chat. So thank you so much again and have a wonderful day. Bye.